Very good. Hey everybody, how are you doing? You're right. Good afternoon and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and online. Hello online folks. So whether you're in Bristol or far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Tony, one of the producers here at the Pervasive Media Studio, and I am dressed in a joyous all black ensemble today, and I've got a bit of helmet hair too. Every Friday we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in the space by hot desking alongside our residents and our staff anytime between 10 and 5 p.m. An especially big welcome to those of you who are new to the studio. Do we have any new faces in here today? Yeah, hello. Everybody else go and say hello to them at some point today, please. So, for those people, what is the Pervasive Media Studio? We are a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, with everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. It's a partnership between the Watershed, University of West England, and University of Bristol. We offer studio space, which means offering desk space, meeting rooms, events, and opportunities for our residents as part of the spirit of generosity and mutual exchange, which we try to foster here. We are a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make time for collaboration. Just before we get going, a little bit of housekeeping. Please do feel free to move around, make a cup of tea, grab a glass of water if you need one. Just on the other side of this wall, we have a little quiet space, so if you need some downtime, do feel free to go into there. Make the space your own as much as you can. The fire exits are on either end of the studio. This one right down there, so down here and on the left, and then this one in that direction as well. If the fire alarm goes off, we're not expecting a drill today, do follow me or one of the rest of the team. Team, put your hands up, please. There's a few there knocking about. Please follow them. We've got accessible toilets through there, and a changing room can be found around that corner as well. There will be a Q&A at the end of this talk. I promise you that you're going to have a bunch of questions. You're in for a treat today. For all of those of you watching online, please do pop your questions into the YouTube chat. And if you're in the building, raise your hands, and I'll come over to you with a mic. You can get news on all of our future events by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio. You can reach us on Twitter at @PMStudioUK or on Instagram at Pervasive Media Studio. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's speaker, creative producer and project manager and studio resident, Prince Taylor. Prince is sharing their learnings and insights from delivering projects on leadership and success, asking big questions about leadership. What is it? Leadership, leaders. Sorry, I messed up your question, sorry. Leaders, who are they? Great questions, Prince. Everyone, you're in for a treat. Over to you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for that. That's a really nice intro, man. Yeah. Firstly, I just want to say thank you all for coming through to listen to me talk. I don't intend to spend most of the time talking this afternoon. Actually, I'm more interested in us having a bit of a conversation. So that flies for you lot watching at home as well. I'm going to share some stuff, and I welcome skepticism. I welcome a couple of, can I swear?
Really mild ones.
Yeah.
The ones you say to your gran.
Yeah. All right, see it. Feel free to tell me if I'm chatting absolute crap, because that's the whole point. That's what I understand collective and equitable leadership to be, right? It's fundamental of it is generative conflict, which is a really fascinating idea. Not one that I've gotten a hang of yet, which is what makes it really exciting. But I sort of just intend to model some of the processes and things that I've learned in this weird journey with you lot in the room and at home. So it is quite literally an open space. It is more of a lunchtime chat than a lunchtime talk, if you know what I'm saying. So in that sort of respect, I will be sharing some ideas. I'll be sharing some a bit of backstory, and then we're gonna play a little game, effectively, because I love games. Yeah, people who know me know I love games, man. So the first thing I want to ask is, who here considers themselves to be a leader? Go on, man. Chuck them up. Come on, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I was like 7. Count 7. I'm going to say 9. Yeah, because I know there's people who wanted to put their hands up, but they didn't. Yeah? All right, amazing. Esme, did we get any leaders from online? 20-second delay. All right, that's cool, man. We can move with that. And I'm just looking at notes on here as well. So don't worry, I'm not like, there's no football today, innit? But I'm not checking scores. I know Arsenal won last night, so I'm happy. All right, cool. Would anyone like to share some of their ideas of characteristics of leadership with us? And do you want me to run around with a mic, or you?
That's my job.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, man. Characteristics of leadership.
The mic is for the purpose of the people online. Just so you know, because people expect to hear themselves really loudly and then they don't. Here you go.
A characteristic I would say is demonstration. So I think leading by example would be one of them.
Banging.
The ability to change your mind.
Confidence.
Confidence.
In your own skills and abilities.
Your own skills and abilities.
Helping other people achieve their ambitions.
Love that.
From Scala Online, listening, holding a deep understanding of others and lived experience.
All right, sick. Yeah. Please, like, I got.
To make other people feel like they can lead.
Courage.
Patience.
Patience as well, courage and patience. Yeah, I mean, like, generally, like, fantastic responses to that question. It's an interesting thing, right? Like, because it's so vast, effectively, what pillars people land on, where they ground themselves when it comes to this idea of leadership, right? So it's what I've come to understand is that it's a fascinating thing, and I'll never get the same answers every single time I ask that question. Okay, cool. So we've spoken about some of the characteristics. It'd be interesting to hear from people what they think happens when leaders get together. Any ideas on that?
I knew there were going to be some great questions.
An echo chamber.
Ooh, damn, son.
Crying.
Okay. Best answer of the day yet. That's actually most on point.
It's like that banging of the sharp metal sound.
The sound of two sharp pieces of metal clanging against each other.
Yeah.
It's a lovely visual idea.
I was wondering whether they could sort of breathe because they can let their leadership guard down for a little bit.
Ooh. All right, sweet. Got one, yeah? Of course, please, man.
Maybe they exchange values and share force if it's possible for them. So they can do more.
I think sometimes lots can happen, but also sometimes nothing can happen.
Love that. How we getting on online? Nothing, yeah? Yeah, just like chuck your hands up and if anything else comes to mind.
Sometimes they consolidate power.
Consolidate power? Ooh.
As a non-leader, because
Ah.
you express, I think sometimes magic and sometimes shitstorm.
Yeah. Fascinating, man. I love that again. What's great is that in sort of hearing the responses and the sort of breadth of those responses as well, people in this room have been really present over the last couple of years, despite what that may have felt like for us individually and collectively, right? We're really perceptive. We pick up on a lot of stuff, knowingly and unknowingly. So sometimes when these archetypal ideas are presented to us, depending on what energy we're carrying in that moment in time, or how we're perceiving the world and ourselves, importantly, we jump to the nearest example of that archetype that's like really at the front of our conscience, right? But effectively, when leaders get together, all of that stuff happens, right? It is a crying shitstorm, but it's a beautiful thing in the same breath as well. So yeah, thank you for humoring me in sort of starting this conversation at that point. Just want to give you a little bit of a backstory, because I always feel a little bit conscious, like, who am I to be standing up here talking about equitable leadership or trying to generate a conversation about equitable leadership, man? Like, when you say that stuff out, when I choose to say that stuff out loud, the imposter syndrome guy, just like, really, you? And I'm like, yeah, really, me. And through what I'm going to share, I think hopefully it will give you some context as to why I believe I can stand up here and chat about equitable leadership. So rewind, back in West Philadelphia, born and raised. Yeah, so I studied film at University of West England, graduated from a really like 50-50 in terms of weight in. It was like 50% practical, 50% really theoretical. And I was one of like 3 people who actually enjoyed that part of the course. So unfortunately for UE, like that course was actually scrapped 2 years after I graduated, which was a shame. I think people did that thing of when they're 18 years old of thinking they know what they want and making a decision and then realizing that, oh, damn, I don't want this, but not changing their mind. There we go. And yeah, going through with it, and then at the end of it thinking, like, why did I do that? However, I was just like, that's the greatest thing I've ever done. Needless to say, I spent the next 2.5 years like applying for jobs in the film industry in the region. I couldn't get a job, so I decided to move into retail, something that I was quite familiar with, and ended up sort of saying to myself, I'm going to take this opportunity to learn what it means to run a reputable business, working for a very successful company, and ended up becoming a manager of the store, and was like, oh yeah, sick, like this is dope. It was a very, very challenging period of time. And when sort of like I reached management, this whole thing started to happen when I realized I didn't like who I was working for. I just said that, and it's gonna be stored on YouTube, innit? I liked the people, I didn't like the company. And that was a very difficult thing, because effectively Bristol has a very clear identity about community and how it chooses to go about and acting on that and making that tangible. However, the ethos and the premise of the organization, the way it was ran in complete polar opposite direction to the city that the shop was in. So I had a decision to make, a decision I didn't know I was making at the time, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, but something I chose to do, which was to prioritize the needs of my staff and of the shoppers over the profits of the organization. And that was a heck of a ride, effectively. But I want to share that with you lot, because once I got to management, I immediately knew that I'd achieved a goal. I knew I was like, okay, cool, we've achieved this. Right, this is sort of like your post-grad, a 6-year post-grad. But I was like, all right, cool, boom. Now I've got to think of an exit strategy. And what does that exit strategy look like? And in that process of stepping down, I chose to empower my team effectively and ensure that about 80% of the team working in that store had management credentials effectively. And that made me feel like I could step down with some sort of safety, ensuring that the organization would still have its very reputable store in a cultural hub in the region, in the UK. And that loads of opportunities had been generated for people who thought they were just coming in to sell trainers, effectively. And I can stand here quite proudly and say that as a result of that decision I didn't realize I was making, I guess a bit of intuition, that organization gained 6 store managers out of that one store, which is something that I guess I haven't seen or heard of since. Again, like, I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I felt like the right thing to do. So mission completed, tick, what's next? Working in the culture sector, right? My whole thing was like, okay, boom, I don't want anyone to feel how I felt when I graduated. So I started looking for opportunities and sort of joined the PM studio as a resident and was given opportunities as well to take risks, actually, and start to understand what it means for me to practice that way in a sector that I want to work in for myself and develop my own style with that. And through that, effectively, the snowball effect of that was being given an opportunity to co-lead on a transforming leadership project. At the same time, or like intimately with being a research fellow on sort of what was the predecessor to my world, Digital Placemaking, Bristol and Bath Creative Clusters program, and the Digital Placemaking Pathfinder. So a series of research fellows were sort of charged with trying to explore and understand what it means for people to be able to interact with physical spaces, but digitally. And how do you do that equitably? How does everyone's voice sort of have some agency? And how does everyone's thought process or opinions or experience, lived experience, how can that sort of filter through the sort of like digital corporeal net, I suppose? Very techie, man. It took us like 6 months to understand what digital placemaking meant. So I'm not gonna lie, I feel quite impressed that I've been able to say that. But yeah, it got my brain, I was just like, cogs are turning, so effectively you start questioning everything. And to sort of put that in the frame of, bring back into the frame this whole thing of like co-leading on the leadership program as well. I actually wasn't gonna go for the job. I didn't think I was good enough for it. An incredible woman called Roseanna Dias was just like, I wanna do the job, but I can't do it on my own. I'd love to do it with you. And I was like, oh yeah, I love you too, man. I'd love to do it with you. That's fantastic. And then we ended up getting the job, like leap of faith, I guess, for us and the organization, but it got me to where I am right now, effectively. And sort of, you start a leadership program in January 2020, and then March 2020 hits, and you're like, we've got to hold this leadership program. And that's when the shit storms, the crying, the nothing, the magic, that's when it all started to happen, right? And it didn't feel like it made any sense at the time, if I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. But you knew that something was happening in this space. And this leadership program was focused purely on youth leadership and developing sort of non-traditional approaches to leadership for people with protected characteristics and from underrepresented communities by and large. A great deal of responsibility and sort of like a project that I'm like super proud of. And I believe like the organization are super proud of as well, and everyone's gone on to do incredible things. And in that sort of like space where I genuinely thought I was fumbling the bag, if I'm gonna be honest with you, like the best thing I could do was put one foot in front of the other. I was approached by another leadership program to mentor on theirs. And I was like, what do you see in me? And he was like, what do they see in you? But I was just like, yeah, this is sick. You know what I'm saying? Amplifying more underrepresented people. I'm here for it, man. I'm gonna take this challenge on as well. And I'll tell you what, the biggest takeaway from co-leading or leading or supporting a leadership program is people are gonna do what they want, actually. And that can be a horrible thing where you feel like your success or the signifiers and markers of your success depends on people doing what we believe they're supposed to do, which is, yeah, wild. But that's the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from that journey and that work that I did. So that sort of brings us up to 2022, like where we are now. And this idea of equitable leadership has been sort of, now it's become like front and center of everything that I do. But if someone was to ask me, how do you do equitable leadership? My answer would be a question, and the question would be about what context are you intending to imply equitable leadership in, right? Because my way of doing it, or the context that I did it in, it wouldn't be fair for us to set an expectation of you getting the same results, applying the same methodology that I applied. So that immediately blows this whole idea of leadership, let alone equitable leadership, out of the water, right? The reason I chose to ask loads of questions at the beginning of this chat is because I wanted to know what room I'm in, firstly. And I can't know what room I'm in without hearing your voices, first and foremost. So I will rarely ever start a talk or a keynote. Like, my introduction about myself will always come after hearing your voices. To some extent, I need to feel who's in the room, first and foremost. And there's a few people here that I've collaborated with who sort of have experienced it for themselves beforehand. And it's, in terms of equitable leadership, and the gentleman over there spoke about sort of like helping people and sort of like allowing people. I struggle with the word enabling, but it's the only word I have now, so for the sake of your time, I'm going to use it. Enabling people to sort of like explore their edges. I'm going to use that term as well, and sort of creating a holistic approach to growth. So sort of with all of that, regarding like this idea of equitable leadership, what I would like to do with everyone in the room today is play a little game, yeah? We're just gonna chop it up, chat, chat stuff. Yeah, just like, it requires a little bit of suspension of disbelief, like, it's about playing along, really. And if you don't want to, that's hunky-dory, do you know what I'm saying? Just whisper your idea or something to the person next to you, and then we'll move on. So this game is called Base Camp. Yeah, baby. And it's a bit of a story. And again, I'd just like you lot to step into the story and act out whatever comes naturally to you. So we all live in a little village at the foot of a mountain. And little old me, I'm preparing to climb the mountain. I've been chatting about it for months now. Like, you lot are pretty much bored of listening to me talk about climbing this mountain, but you've witnessed, my dedication to this task that I'm taking on. I leave on Monday. It's Friday today, and I leave on Monday. Some of you are sort of like thinking about, okay, cool, like this idea of like, okay, cool, he leaves on Monday, like what's coming up? We know that there's a sort of like leaving party happening on Sunday. And I've gotten myself sort of like physically ready, but I'm super disorganized, actually. The trip is gonna take me about 6 days to get up there, and it's gonna take me about the same amount of time to get down. And sort of like you lot are beginning to experience with me and witness that sort of the size of the task at hand is now starting to become a bit of a distraction. So I'm more unorganized than I normally am. So key things here are, I'm about to climb a mountain. We all live in this village at the bottom of the mountain. There's gonna be a party on Sunday. I leave on Monday. It takes me 6 days to get up and around the same amount of time to get back. And I just wanna know from you lot, what leaps out at you? Like, you want to get involved, you want to help in some way, shape, or form because you see me flailing. And I want to know where your mind instinctively goes. If you are going to give me help, if you're going to give me advice, I just want to know where your mind instinctively goes. I guess I'll give you lot a couple of minutes to think about it. If anyone's got an immediate answer, please fire away.
There's been some feedback online that people need to hold the microphone directly in front of their mouths when they speak because they're having a hard time hearing anyone but Prince.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've got a question from Scarlett.
Sorry, we've got a question.
I've got a question from Scarlett online who says, "Do you have to go alone?"
Alright, shouts to Scarlett, man. I see you, Scarlett. Do I have to go alone? Yes.
Do you have enough food and drink to take with you?
Great question. Great question.
Does the village have internet connection?
Does the village have internet connection?
Okay, cool.
Could you build on that?
Yeah, I was just going to Google like climbers packing list and just send it to you.
Sick.
I wasn't going to Google a list, but I was definitely going to ask you if I could write one with you.
Ah, okay.
A list.
Nice. We've got Claire at the back as well.
What's the worst thing that can happen if we don't do anything?
I would try and find out how stressed out you are, and if you're not, then I would love to ask questions like, why do you want to go up there? What moves you to go up there? I would just first find out if you're prepared to listen. If not, then I would keep the questions for myself.
It's going to be a long 6 days when I get back.
Oh, I was actually curious, were you the village leader?
Ah.
Is that the configuration? Is it? No.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
'Cause it depends on that a little bit.
Build on that, please.
In terms of how much permission we felt sort of step in and hold process with you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Great thought.
If you're preparing to climb the mountain, who's organising the party?
What are you going to do at the top of the mountain and at the bottom?
Yeah.
I wasn't getting the impression that you were fully ready in yourself to go. So kind of related to what you were saying. Yeah, I'm just not sure that you're you're prepared. Like having watched the Netflix shows, they have they're very calm when they go out. They've prepped for months already. It might not
if you hold it closer.
It might not be that it's not a safe place to go on your own necessarily. So it's good to be prepared.
Okay. Some great ideas, some great thoughts, some great questions. Most of those questions I can't answer. But to hear those questions helps me paint a better picture of the journey that I'm about to go on. And I just want to ask everybody as well, how invested are you in that journey as well? I guess that's really invested, that's not really, and that's couldn't care. Just give me thumbs up or midway or down. Yes, interesting. That's just beautiful, man. That's just beautiful. And so the reason I'm sort of like asking that question as well is because as I understand equitable leadership, if I succeed in that journey, we've all succeeded. If I fail in that journey, we've all failed. You see what I'm saying? So it's like what I've come to learn from sort of like the models that I've used and the methods that have been sort of shared with me with regards to trying to practice equitable leadership authentically is that all of those sort of approaches, thoughts, questions, like levels of investment need to exist for that story to be written, right? The wonderful thing about that example was that it was one really clear common goal. It was mine. Chat to me.
You did say that we could argue with you.
Yeah, yes.
So maybe, but wouldn't we all go up the mountain if that was true? Why are you going up the mountain on your own? Is that equitable leadership?
It's because I chose to. I didn't ask anybody to sort of like come up the mountain.
But did you invite anyone?
No, no.
But if you all go up the mountain, the village will fail, won't it?
So this is, please, yeah.
I definitely feel the threat of it being a failure on us if something happens to you.
Yeah, yeah.
So it does, yeah, you have made it an imperative for us to help you prepare in a way and to check you going out.
Yeah, yeah.
So if I'm hearing you,
Mhm.
what I'm getting, what you're saying, is that as important as that individual is the crowd. And my question would be, who's responsible to get that crowd committed with you?
Mhm.
Is the leader responsibility to gain the crowd's what's the word you said? Not
Investment.
Investment.
Yeah.
Get them invested.
Yeah.
Or how does that happen? Because
Yeah.
I hear what she said about she's as a crowd invested.
Mhm.
Where does that come from?
Mhm.
And half of us were like, so why? Is it because it's beneficial for us? So because I know there's a benefit for me that you get up there. So maybe I'll be a lot more invested if I knew what the benefit was for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So this is like.
if not, then it just it's your thing. If it's not really going to affect my life and my village life, it's your problem, mate. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%, 100%. And sorry, yes, please.
No, it's okay. I'll listen to what you've got to say first.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so.
Do you want to answer that question?
Yeah.
Do you know what? Yeah, let me spend a second on this idea, because like I guess from the models of like collective leadership and equitable leadership that I've been sort of like exposed to and developing and sort of practicing myself, it all, at the beginning, when I said the thing that I've learned the most is people are going to do what they want. Like, I can't pretend to, as an individual, as part of this community, unless I've clearly communicated whatever it is I need to communicate to you, I can't pretend or assume that you're actually going to be invested. However, in terms of my language, how I choose to understand my position within this community, that becomes part of the story I tell myself, that I'm effectively doing this for me, right? There's something in this for me. And on that journey that I go on, hopefully at the end of it, I will know myself better to be able to come back to the community and be more of myself as a sort of like superhero. I'm going to be really crass and reductive, but superhero sort of narrative arc, right? However, my responsibility and the action that I take and the choice that I make, it stands with me alone. I can only act in the faith that in some way or form it contributes to everybody's sort of like experience of that moment in time or relationships with each other. Does that sort of like step into that conversation a little bit better?
Yeah, I kind of got a little bit lost. But
Yeah.
It's fine. I might, find
Yeah.
my way back again to see where you want to take us.
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, it's a shame we've only got an hour because the last period of times we did this, we had 2 years, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to like condense it, but I needed to hear those challenges.
Yeah, so I'm glad I heard you say that, because I would have wanted to have that conversation with you, to hear you say that. But I'm on board with you going and helping you go. I don't mind what happens when you get there. And if you come back down, I hope you bring something back down with you that's valuable to all of us, which is why I'm okay with supporting you going. It isn't about a return on that investment that's guaranteed. It's that it's important for me to hear you tell me that it's important for you to go. And when you get there, that there'll be something for you.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to support that. I think that's, yeah, so having heard that, you answered my question before I asked it.
Oh, man, magic. Magic. Sorry, someone said that earlier.
Yeah, kind of following on from that, like you want to climb a mountain, but like I want to go swim in a ravine, and like Sally from the village wants to build a rocket ship and go to space. And I want all of us to do all the things that we want to do, but somebody also needs to be in the village, like, I don't know, looking after the sheep or whatever. So I guess I'm like invested in all of our journeys as long as we're not all away from, I don't know why I said the sheep, but the sheep for too long. So like, I guess it's about, I'm invested and I support you and I want you to go up the mountain. But as long as Sally still gets to build her rocket ship, or there's time, we put some time aside for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I hear that. We got Esme at the back online, and then
yeah, I've got a few online. So just a comment from Scarlett saying empathy and collective care, and also a counter argument saying, but should it be seen as an investment, or he can't just go because he needs to? Duncan says, can there be more than one leader in this story? I.e., is leadership inherently singular?
This is fantastic, man. Joe, I guess whilst the mic's coming over, one of the most fascinating sort of like for me to stand here and sort of work through this with you lot is the idea keeps coming up that I'm a leader, which I'm just a member of the community. Do you see what I'm saying? Which is what makes our approach to leadership, and therefore equitable leadership and collective leadership, really interesting. Because in the story, I didn't claim to have any authority or power or dominion. The significance about that story was my choice and exercising a will of mine, right? And the story I have told myself in order to get me literally over that hill, right? So yeah, sorry, that's sort of, I wanted to throw that in there right now, but I'd love to hear what you want to say.
I want to hear about your investment in us, because I'm nervous that you're taking a journey that you seem unprepared for, and how you've thought about your responsibility to us.
Yeah, so that is a phenomenal question. And I'm going to come back to that idea of people do what they want again. It's like, it feels like a get out of jail card, right? And I just going to use one of the leadership programs as a bit of an anecdote for that. We were just developing, sort of like, we just, sent out the program to the people we were delivering this sort of like course program to. And everything had been mapped out. And then we were put into lockdown and the world just goes like that. So then we had to like really adapt. And we got off on not the best footing, admittedly, because as co-producers, we were taking responsibility and sort of like holding the failure of people's lack of engagement. We made it our fault. We made it our problem, effectively. And that began to really influence I'm going to use the word severity in our tone when we were trying to communicate with people, right? We were really aware of the fact that this crisis was affecting people in numerous different ways, and not being able to see the wood from the trees was a theme that kept coming up in all of our conversations. It took us about 4 months out of a year-long program. It took us about 4 months to actually understand that where we were was exactly where we were supposed to be, and people's level of engagement was exactly as it was supposed to be. We then had to return to our stakeholders and our funders and say, actually, we've been trying to work to this evaluative structure that you've brought to us, and it is creating more damage than good. We're supposed to be empowering people, but we're still having to try and talk about them as statistics. And at that point, we made the decision to let go. I did say enter cheesy self-help line, but that was effectively what empowered the program to gain momentum again. When the fact that the door was open and people could choose whether or not they showed up and choose what capacity they would show up in, started to engage people more. And for us, that was a really sort of like, in terms of what we'd understood about the program we were delivering, that was counterintuitive, effectively. Another point in that sort of space as well is we had designed a program in which we had tried to sort of like simulate like partnerships and buddies and relationships just to sort of spark that and get that spark going. And again, we saw that as a tool that could be super effective given the fact that everybody was living in isolation now. So let's try and create these pockets of time, these opportunities for people to connect. And when you turn on Zoom and you're the only one connecting with yourself, that's proper embarrassing. Do you know what I'm saying? But again, it was necessary because those people chose to rest in whatever way they choose to rest. What we gained from that sort of like horrible experience. What we gained from that horrible experience was trust, effectively, because the people who had come onto the course had a common goal. They wanted to explore what leadership meant for them, and they knew that they wanted to debunk the myths, right? That was the goal. We knew how we wanted to facilitate that. We knew how we wanted to create an environment for that to happen. We had set up like pinch points where we could experiment with stuff, set up opportunities with different organizations where we could then sort of broker relationships and start to push these ideas out into the sector. But in that context, we had to trust that people were going to do what was right for them. And in part of the program as well, after like quite a lot of negotiation with a stakeholder, we actually wrote in a back-end evaluation period. So it was meant to be delivery for 2 years, evaluation for a year, and that's the end of it. Our evaluation for this project finishes in 2026, right? Because in that reshuffle, we had to appreciate the fact that this was a much bigger project than we had anticipated, and it's quite impossible to gain the sort of like answers and the landscape of which these individuals are now operating in the sector, actually quite difficult to sort of like try and quantify that without them having gone off and applied whatever it is they picked up from the program for themselves. Again, like one of the things that we can like really gladly say is that pretty much like everyone on that program has gone on to work in some level of influence within mostly SME organizations. But these young people are on boards, they're on committees, they're having in meetings of governance and strategy. Again, we knew that's what we wanted, but we didn't know that us sort of like, one of the big themes that came up in our moments of reflection as an organization was this idea of shifting sands. Those 4 months, every time we thought we'd find some grounding, the ground moved from beneath you, like in terms of the real world, but in terms of the program as well. And it's that trust that I'm going to take this step, and I'm going to take this step in good faith. And hopefully I've been authentic enough in myself for people to be able to see that it's in good faith. And that as a reflection of, I'm taking this step as a reflection of sort of like my investment or commitment to this idea, to this goal, and what it could represent for us as a sort of like community. So again, to come back to the question, and I'm trying to like touch loads of little points that were raised as well. In coming back to what I've understood us to have gained in practicing equitable leadership. Are we right for time? Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. What I understood us to have gained in terms of practicing equitable leadership. Again, like the reason I asked for you to go to where your mind instinctively goes is because that's your intuition. At the end of the day, you're going to do and think what you want to do and think given who you are at this moment in time. And what I tried to do was relinquish any power I had from that situation. However, because of the optics, it was offered to me. And that's part of the interesting thing about equitable leadership, because someone has to stand in front at some point because of their skill set, right? I was saying to Tony that I'm like, actually like shitting bricks today.
It's all right. We already had one, don't worry.
Yeah, oh yeah, we did. Okay, cool, yeah. Like, I had a meeting before and someone was like, you speak really well. And I was like, he was like, no, he doesn't. I've been led to understand, and I know, beginning to learn of myself, that I have an ability to speak to people individually and in a group. So that is, when I was thinking about this talk and thinking about how I could model equitable leadership, I thought, what is my skill set? It's the ability to hold conversation, to try and listen as well as I can to people, to try and reflect what I'm hearing from them back at them, and that is my skill set. That's what I've come to be known for in my work. And that was my intuition. And I tried to fight it. I thought to myself, do you know what? Let me make a fancy something like that. I even said to Jack, I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to put on a screensaver or something. So if they tune out, they've got something to look at. But I was like, no, but that's not fair on me, because my work and my practice is about these moments of, as I said, generative conflict, right? Like leadership is about sort of, as I understand it, is about building a relationship with a figural edge. What I feel sorry for about our leaderships in the world, our leaders in the world at the moment, is that the authenticity required to build relationships with your constituents or whoever is voting for you, the ability to do that is, I don't see any evidence of it, actually, in most of the leaders of like our modern Western society. And those are the archetypes we have to aim for. However, what we modeled today was the reality of leadership. It was intuition. It was moving with the knowledge that you have, your perception of the world, and presenting that, having the guts to present that in a room full of other people, and allowing those things to meet in conflict, but at the end of the day saying, but there's a common goal. We still want this guy to climb the mountain. So what does it mean? Like, oh, don't remember that Sally wants to build a rocket. Don't forget Sally wants to build a rocket as well. So you best come back in 12 days because you're going to be helping Sally build the rocket. Do you know what I mean? That's motivation. That's what I was trying to get at when I was saying that it was something that I've chosen to do for myself. And I hope that I can do it to represent you lot and that you lot gain something from it. When I come back, I'll be the version of myself I need to be in order to be able to contribute to what everybody else wants to do. So leadership has this weird thing of like, again, as my researchers and work has sort of like shown me, is that it's helping to create, contributing to the creation of an environment where people can explore all of those things for themselves and bring the challenges to the space without being judged effectively. And there is no one-size-fits-all model for that. It is actually about our ability to sit in moments of conflict and discomfort and allow them to exist in that moment in time, but to have its value and purpose attached to a common goal. Does that make sense? Because I haven't figured it out. That's just where my research has gotten me now. Do you see what I'm saying? But like I said, more questions. Or Tony here and then lady here.
Sorry, I'm just going to go first. My apologies. Thanks, Will. Prince.
That's all right. So my first name is Prince. I've been known as Will for like the last 30 years of my life. In the last year, I tried to take my first name back, and it's this awkward thing. I didn't go by the name Prince because growing up as Prince Will in the 1990s was boring, right? And now I get called Prince or Will and Prince Will all the time. So that's what it is. That's the fun
Prince,
of it.
thank you very much.
That's cool, man.
It's really interesting. You've talked all the way through this about leadership, but you haven't mentioned power as part of your discussion of leadership, right? And it got me thinking, you're going up this mountain, and you mentioned that you might not be a leader in this place.
Yeah.
But it gets me to thinking that all of these other plans that Sally's got and everybody else has got, there's got to be somebody that holds power in the village. And you keep mentioning as well that people do what they want, but actually there's edges on that. Like in my role here, I've got a whole bunch of creative freedom, but I couldn't just go and blow all my budget on an ice cream van because I fancied it, right? There are actually edges to what I can and can't do because there's power in leadership as well. You do have in leadership, there is telling people what to do a little bit. And actually, if at that time in the village, it wasn't the appropriate time for you to go off on a self-discovery voyage up a mountain, because actually, what's your job in the village? What's your remit in the village? Which goes back to what Joe was saying around what is your responsibility to the rest of the people in the village. So I don't know, I guess, what power and leadership and compelling people to do what you want or what they need to do, not what you want them to do necessarily.
When you talk about power and telling people what to do, it makes me think that it brings up the idea of time and within a time frame, which is we all live to time frames. But if you're trying to influence somebody, then it might be beyond a time frame. It might be it might take some time to do that. So it might not be about telling people, but inspiring people or motivating people beyond a specific time frame and let them come to that.
Can I add to that just quickly before we move on to your thought? Again, like as I've learned and from the experiences that I've been sort of like privileged to have, we do this thing of conflating management with leadership as well. Delegation and accountability are necessary. In terms of that idea of doing what they want, I was framing that in the context of what people intuitively lean towards, right? Like, if I know you and I know your skill set, if there's a project that we're working on, I will come to Tony for his skill set because I know that's where you intuitively find more joy in your contribution. I will never come to you and ask you to do something we both know you're incapable of doing. So in that respect, there accountability occurs, in which case it's that process of being clear about expectations from the beginning, and where there's like gray area for growth or gray area for exploration in that, finding stuff out as we go along. I'm not saying that nobody should be in charge, but what I'm finding more interesting in the work that I do is when we know what someone's power is, like the collective effort of enabling that, and you just put me onto this, which is like so ironic, because one of the things we've done at Cargo is we had a look at the word education. Like Cargo is an organization, and we make Black history resources for primary schools and secondary schools. And we make them interactively as well, so they exist online on a HTML page, so you don't, once you click onto it, you don't need to constantly refresh. Teachers don't have to be in the same room as the student to learn. Teachers get to learn alongside the student as well, because we understand that teachers are quite time poor and fearful of delivering like bad education to people, especially with stuff they're not comfortable with. So we were looking at education, and there's two root words to education in Latin. There's educare, which is to stand in front of people and tell them what to do, and there's educare or educere, I can't remember how it's said, but that is to stand in front of people and ask them questions about what they want to do and creating an environment that they can lead on whichever line of inquisition they want. And our entire Western society is built on educare. I'm going to stand here and tell you what to do. Whereas what Cargo is trying to do is move into that space of saying, here's something that's really cool and intuitive. Have fun with it and see what comes up next. And yeah, there are responsibilities and accountability that comes with that, but we're trying new stuff, if I'm going to put it shortly. Sorry, I spoke for much longer than I wanted to.
We have got just under 5 minutes for any other questions. Sorry, we've got just under 5 minutes left for any questions. So anybody online, do pop your questions in. Any hands up in the room, and I'll come over.
There's one here, Tony.
Just remember to speak into the mic, everybody, politely.
Just wanted to say that for sure you have the ability to engage people and create a group, which you did just now. But I just wanted to say that you were talking about context, but you didn't give us a context of that village. What is our history? What that mountain signifies for us? How often other people go to that mountain? You know, and of course, like I imagine you, because the way you are, as someone lovable in the community. So you could already have in the people kind of investing in you for no reason, which is perfect. And it's not transactional in the same way that what are you going to bring for us? Your community was a nice community. But I think it is very important to understand this question that you're asking in relation to the history of that place and what you signify in that. So if all of this, or the Western model, or what leadership, the problem is it's very abstract. And because the system, in the Western model system, is based on abstraction, and then, you know, everybody has to understand themselves in abstraction. Okay, you know, is this mountain famous because of identity? Is it because we can find a flower that gives us eternal life? Is it because we like to hear your stories? Or we just, you know, think it's good for him, finally he's doing something.
Yeah.
Aye.
So I think let's because in that way, then there can be moment for us as a community that we all become leadership, or that we are politicized to go to mountain and move the mountain together, which has happened. So without that historical, then who is leader? You know, let them deal with it.
Do you know what? You're the last person I'll speak to before I leave. That's it. Like, but no, again, like all of those thoughts, that's what's actually driven my passion about this work. I didn't realize this is what I wanted to do until the start of this year, effectively. I've been practicing and I'm still practicing. But my favorite thing about this work, as I think it was in my bio, is just creating moments like these and sort of modeling what it means to step out in faith and hoping that it leaves something behind for somebody else, you know, just to show up as themselves, basically. But yeah, there was so much in there that I couldn't even answer. All I know is that when I'm about to climb, you're the person I'm calling. Yeah.
Then we might have to leave it there. I'm so sorry. I feel like we could go on for ages. Prince Taylor, everybody. Thank you so much, Prince. That was amazing. If you want to stick around in Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, then please come find one of the studio team. Studio team, raise your hands again, please. There we go, come and say hello. If you're watching online, drop us a line at studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions that you might have. Thank you all for coming today. Join us again next week, same time, same place. Have a lovely weekend. Woo.